We are now in the post-election environment, and we need to put our political differences and come together as a nation to rebuild our country. And what way to do it than this recently ended conference that was held in the Victoria Falls, the Zimbabwe Economic Development Conference that was officially opened by the President, Comrade Mnangagwa. And they were weighing on different issues, and part of the resolutions of that conference are set to restructure the budget for 2024 as well as include revisions on the National Development Strategy 1. So we are going to unpack this conversation and get into the details of some of the things that were discussed, including the inflation, the stability, the exchange rates, as well as the debt restructuring of our country. Stay tuned for that conversation. This is The World of Business, and my name is Steve. This is a business program that comes your way every other week, and we herald unsung but thriving entrepreneurs on this platform, as well as give you the latest updates as they happen on the stock markets. Do stay tuned for the second segment where we are going to be giving you that analysis. But for now, we give you the exchange rates as of today.
Exchange rates as of Wednesday, 4 October were: the Zimbabwe dollar to the USD interbank rate was at $5,591.96. The Zimbabwe dollar to the Great Britain pound interbank rate was at $6,756.26. The Zimbabwe dollar to the euro interbank rate was at $5,856.52. The Zimbabwe dollar to the South African rand interbank rate was at $0.0034. The Zimbabwe dollar to the Botswana pula interbank rate was at $406.45.
We also give you commodity prices as they are on the global markets.
Commodity prices as of Wednesday afternoon were: gold per ounce traded at $1,838.50 after it went down by 0.16 percentage points. Silver per ounce traded at $21.29 after it went down by 0.41 percentage points. Copper per pound traded at $360.65 after it went down by 0.40 percentage points. Platinum per ounce traded at $873.38 after it went up by 0.18 percentage points.
That was all we had for you in the first segment of The World of Business. Do join me in the second segment where we are going to be analyzing the resolutions and the discussions that were held at the Zimbabwe Economic Development Conference in Victoria Falls. Stay tuned for that conversation. Welcome back to the second segment of The World of Business. My name is Steve Tadzoka, and as said earlier on, we're going to be zeroing into the conference that was happening in Victoria Falls, the Zimbabwe Economic Development Conference, acronymed ZEDCON, that was officially opened this week by His Excellency President Mnangagwa. And the conference is still ongoing, and is set to, the outcomes of that conference are set to contribute to the structuring of the 2024 budget. And to help me unpack that conversation is an industrialist and the general manager for Buy Zimbabwe, as well as an economist, an economic analyst, Prosper Chitambara, and Mr. Alois Burutsa. Gentlemen, welcome to The World of Business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, as we kickstart this conversation, over to you, Mr. Chitambara. The Zimbabwe Economic Development Conference, ZEDCON, was hosted by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. It was running under the theme Public and Private Resource Mobilization for Sustainable Development. What is the significance of this theme in terms of the rebuilding of our nation?
I think it's very significant in the sense that as a country we have a huge financing gap across all sectors of the economy. When you look at infrastructure, you're looking at a financing gap of about $5 billion US dollars per annum. In fact, the total financing requirement for Zimbabwe has been estimated at around $40 billion. So it's quite obvious that government on its own can't mobilize that huge resource envelope. So there's need for government to harness and to leverage the private sector through public-private partnerships. And of course, not just the private sector, also need to leverage even the diaspora. We need to leverage other innovative ways and means of mobilizing resources to finance our sustainable development program. So it's very, very critical. The private sector can play a greater role towards sustainable development in our economy. Of course, I'm not saying they're not playing a role. They are playing a role, but that can be enhanced. But of course, it also requires the government to implement the right kind of reform agenda and incentives, because ultimately an economic agent responds to the right kind of incentives that have been provided.
And maybe moving forward, the ZEDCON would not have been a sustainable conference if they hadn't addressed issues to do with the debt resolution, the inflation, and as well as the exchange rate for our local currency. So those were some of the discussions that were held. And in that spotlight, what resolutions were put forward with regards to resolving our current economic crisis as far as those three facets are concerned?
Well, I think let me start with the debt. The debt issue, we know there's the high-level structured dialogue platform where discussions are ongoing between the government and development partners and creditors. Of course, the civil society are also part of that dialogue. They've already agreed on what needs to be done in terms of the reforms, macroeconomic reforms, governance reforms, and institutional reforms. So I think that conversations at ZEDCON are zeroed in on the ongoing work, especially by the thematic working groups. Because the thematic working groups, these are the technical working groups that are actually thrashing the finer details in terms of these necessary and requisite reforms that we must implement to unlock the full potential of our economy. In terms of stability, I think, especially around the issue of the currency, I think there is consensus that there is need for a managed process towards de-dollarization, ensure that we address the fundamental factors that are critical in terms of instilling confidence in the local currency and the local economy. So the consensus that we don't have to do a big bang rushed approach, but let's address the market fundamental factors and allow for a market determined process in terms of our de-dollarization agenda.
And do you think that BRICS would be a significant vehicle in terms of adopting this de-dollarization agenda?
I think it is, and already globally, we're already seeing moves towards de-dollarization. Of course, it's going to take a bit of time because the US dollar is still the preferred currency for trading globally and even for a store of value. It's been fairly stable over the years. So economic agents across the globe still prefer to hold their assets and to transact in the USD. But of course, we are already seeing the slow but progressive shift away from the. Also, the the US economy has been facing its own fair share of challenges, a huge debt stock. So I think going forward, we are going to probably see a weakening in terms of the global influence, or whether it's political and even economic influence of the US. So I think that will also obviously drive the de-dollarization process at a global level.
Very interesting. And also one of the other issues that we raised at the conference is the current siege between the formal, wholesale and retail sector and the informal sector players, especially the tuck shops who are selling products cheaper than the official retail outlets because of the alleged means by which they obtain the goods. So what can be the reason for the poor performance of the retail sector, and what can be done to alleviate the chaos that we are in, especially being perpetrated by the tuck shops?
Thank you. I think you see, this anomaly or these issues that are coming up regarding the challenges that are being faced by the formal retailers, it's mainly to do with our exchange rate management. The playing field is not level because the formal retailers are being asked to use the formal exchange rate, the auction exchange rate basically. But you will notice that there's now quite a huge margin between the formal exchange rate and the black market rate, right? Now what then that does is that if a retailer is asked to use a formal, the formal rate, in USD terms, their prices will be higher than the guys at the tax shops, because the guys in the informal sector, number one, they are not even accepting Zim dollars at all. Number two, they don't swipe, they don't take cash and so forth. They only want US dollar cash. Okay, so obviously those guys, the small retailers, the informal retailers, they've got access to US dollar cash. So what then that does is that they become more attractive. Their prices have become lower in USD as opposed to the formal retailers. It's not that the formal retailers are expensive, but it's just that they are doing according to the book. They are operating according to the book where they have been told use this rate, so they'll use that rate. But it then renders them expensive.
But
Right.
don't they have provision to get foreign currency from the auction system?
No, they've not received any foreign currency from the auction. I can't think of any retailer that has received any forex from the auction.
Are they applying for that forex?
I know some have applied before, but they did not get much, right? But even if they were getting from the auction, you see, the challenge that is there is that the suppliers who supply products to the retailers, some of them are getting from the forex, from the auction system, and some are getting from the black market. So the price that goes to them from the because remember, retailers are just price takers, so they get a price and they forward it on to you. So what we need to do as a country is that we need to level the playing field. We need to keep the formal businesses in business. Why? Because the formal retailers, number one, they are one of the biggest contributors to VAT and IMMT tax to the government. Number two, they are one of the biggest employers, right? And also, you will notice that currently what is happening now, whereby the suppliers are going direct to the tax shops and avoiding the formal wholesalers and retailers. What then that does is that the tax shops themselves, remember, not only are they don't even buy from they don't support my local suppliers as much as the formal retailers, because those guys, they go in outside, they import, they smuggle things and so forth. But the formal retailers, number one, they are forced through the Bank Use Promotion Act to bank their money. So if the formal retailers can then start collecting US dollars, not what is currently happening, where people go and swipe and get swipe cards from people outside their shops, and then they come in and swipe. If the formal retailers start getting USD, that USD will then come into the formal system, right? And government will then have access to that money. But currently what is happening, the money is staying outside the formal shops, but it goes to the tax shop, and those guys at the tax shops, they don't bank, they don't pay taxes, and so forth. So it is important that we safeguard the formal. We cannot allow the formal retail to suffer. And also one other important aspect that we are forgetting. Now the manufacturers, before, the manufacturers used to deliver to a formal retailer, right? 3 or 4 retailers and 3 or 4 formal wholesalers. Now, because of this arrangement here, they now have to go to each and every tax shop delivering.
Yeah, please, as you touch on that, that was actually my next question, that the manufacturing sector is bypassing the formal retail sector and favoring the tax shops because they are liquid in terms of the USD. So as a country, should we be worried about that?
Yes, we should be worried about that, because remember, the manufacturers themselves, now they have to go and deliver door to door. They do what is called van sales. Now what that does is that it increases their costs. Because remember, before they would just go to one more big wholesaler and offload there, and then people will come and buy. The tax shops will come to that wholesaler. Now the manufacturers have to go to each and every. So that's more legwork for them. That therefore increases their cost of distribution. Now they have to employ more people. They now have more trucks and so forth. That is increasing their costs. And who is paying for all that? It's the consumer. You follow? Because now the manufacturers have got to factor in that cost. Before they would supply, they would have 4 or 5 wholesalers that they supply, and they're done. Now they have to go to hundreds of small tax shops and supply them. You can imagine the cost of distribution that they're going through. And that is also leading to the cost of doing business in this country. And that's when you hear people saying Zimbabwean goods are expensive. And yet it's simply because of this. Whereas now, then the small guys, the informal, the tax shops, they also go outside to South Africa and they bring in products, right? They import products and also killing local industry. Because if they're bringing in products from South Africa, that product is landing here cheaper because of whatever means that they will have used, and that is again affecting our local manufacturing industry. So before we know it, we are going to have a problem where the former wholesalers, the former retailers have closed. The manufacturers themselves are also going to go out of business very soon. Because remember, the tax shops, they go out and they bring product from outside. And also, more importantly, we cannot rely on the tax shops. Remember, a tax shop is me and my wife, right? And the 2-3 other guys. So tomorrow, if we hear that people are making money by going to Zambia and getting fish, that guy will just close his tax shop and go, right? But the former retailer cannot just make that decision overnight. They've got thousands of people to think about. They've got other things to think about. So they will not close. But the tax shops, we cannot rely on them because those guys can wake up tomorrow and they've closed shop.
And they've closed, yeah.
Some of them are even foreigners. They can just wake up and go back to their countries. So as a country, we cannot put our trust, we cannot put our everything. Say, look, let's support these guys at the expense of the formal retailers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Burutsa and Mr. Chitambara, for weighing in your opinions on this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
And that brings us to the end of this segment of the World of Business. And indeed, we are looking forward to the resolutions that were derived from the ZEDCON, the Zimbabwe Economic Development Conference, that was happening in Victoria Falls and officially opened by His Excellency, and with hopes that it's going to spill over into the structuring of the 2024 national budget, as well as the revision of the National Development Strategy 1. And as you've observed from this conversation, there are a lot of issues that are going to be addressed and that need to be addressed if we are going to develop our country. And with that, I leave you to take a short break, and then we come back on the second segment where we give the spotlight to the Entrepreneur of the Week. But for now, enjoy your viewing. Third and final segment of the World of Business, where we feature the Entrepreneur for the Week. And for this week, the team for the World of Business went and spoke to Mr. Tendai Mapisa, an agricultural entrepreneur who has implemented smart farming methods to enhance his agricultural activities. Let us hear more from Sela Mareri as she speaks to Mr. Mapisa.
Today we are in Chiota, Mashonaland East, about 70 kilometers from Harare, where we are joined by Mr. Tendai Mapisa, an agricultural entrepreneur. He has definitely proved that the poor soils of Chiota can still be used productively to promote the agricultural sector. He has also managed to create employment opportunities. Talk about women empowerment. He also has women working in the fields. He's going to tell us more about this in this conversation. Mr. Mapisa, thank you so much for joining us today. And as we begin the conversation, can you tell us about the motivation? Chii chakakupai motivation yekuti mufunge kuti aiwa ini ndakuda zvekurima, ndakuda kufokasa nekurima, ndisiye zvimwe zvese izvi zvingadai zvichiitwa nevamwe vanhu?
Ndairi mnaifarira zvekuda kurima. Nokuti ndaiti ndikaona mombe dzichirima miforo zviya ndainzwa kunyatsonzwa kuti aiwa iri vhu iri kai rofanira kunge richishandiswa. Saka 2013 ndipo pandakabva ndati no, inini palendi shoma yandingawari mushure mekunge ndasarawo nechirongwa chaipiwa neminda. Ndakasvikokumbira minda kunoko kumasabhuku edu nemadzibaba, ndobva vati kunza panapa pari pasango, ndofunga as you can see miti yakatikomberedza ndozvazvakaita panapa, nemwe miti yatakasiya mushoma ranga riri sango. We had to start kuvaka danga rehuku iri. Ndo shungu dzangu dzandaiva nadzo pakutanga ndichitsva kuti ndiite huku, because I realized kuti huku dzine quick return. Huku wadzirima 6 wakusa mari momwe. Of course yaive mufungo yekuti ukaisa huku like ndakatanga kutovaka danga rakakura rinotanga about 6,000 huku. So ndangofunga kuti zvikori nyori kana ukaisa huku 6,000 times $5 130,000. But hazvina kunge zviita sekudaro. Takatanga tine mugodhi wataive nawo ndowatatakacha ugongwe chipa huku mvura. But tamuna December, because takatanga kuisa huku muna October. Tamuna December nekupisa kwekunze mugodhi wakapwa. Vakomana ndipo vakatanga kuenda kuchibhorani kunochera mvura yekupa huku. Saka tapedza bhechi iroro ndakabva ndatongogaya very fast, ndipo ndakati no, ngatisingechi bore. Ndipo patakasinga bore redu riri papo about 50 meters deep. Takusupply chi huku mvura. Patakaona kuti mvura yabuda imvura yakawanda, hatingangoti mvura yemubore yetongoipa huku chete hazvaimika sense. So that's when takabva tazoclear lady about a hectare yatakatanga nayo. Nenew technology yakabvawo kuIsrael yemadrip, ndobva taisa chi madrip lines edu. Ndobva tatanga nekupa madomasi. Saka madomasi atairima pakutanga pache papo takanga tichitoendesa kutaundi tichisupply masupermarkets. And zvinhu zvakabva zvatanga kutongotoona kuti zvinhu zvakuita sei, zvinhu zvakutofamba, because mari madomasi like papo takatanga takarima about 23,000 plants. Kwaive kutanga ende neshungu dzekuti ndikarima zvakawanda ndiwana mari. But mukudaro imomo zvine maproblems azvainge zvinawo atanga tisina kuona kumberi uko. Saka madomasi akasvika time yekuti akabva azoflood. Isu tine madomasi akawanda. So tikazotanga kutora madomasi aya mamwe tichitopa vanhu, mamwe takutorasa, mamwe takutopa mbudzi.
Mr. Mapisa, patatanga conversation yedu mataura imimi kuti mune ma-challenges anova iwo matambudziko amakasanganawo pamaitanga kuita zvokurima izvi. Mataura kuti makainkea ma-losses, mataura kuti pamwe pachona maiti mukarima chinhu maigona kuwana chatoora futi after some time. Tiudzei kuti makakwanisa sei kufighta ma-challenges aya, and chii chamungakurudzirawo vamwe varimi in terms of overcoming ma-challenges aungasangana nawo mukurima?
Kurima ndokwandaida kuramba ndichiita. Nekuti I remember very well patainge tiri kuchikoro tichiita geography taiziva kuti backbone yenyika yedu isusu yakaengwa naagriculture. Yakaengwa naagriculture kudaro ndofunga tikatarisa zvakafanana nema-GDP contribution yaihombe yeZimbabwe inobva kuagriculture. So inini I knew very well kuti ndikaramba ndichirima even though maproblems arimo ndinosvika pandinoscowa chete because nyange zvikanzi kwaita hondo, kwaita drought, kwaita chii, vanhu vanoda kungodya chete. Chinongodiwa chete kungomeka sure kuti tagadzirisa nyaya dzemapricing models edu.
Ministry yedu yeagriculture zvichisanganisira nehurumende vane maprograms avakaintroducer anosapota mafarmers. For example, tinana Pfumvudza vanova vakaadoptwa nemafarmers akawanda. Mungatiudzawo here mabenefits ekuadopta maprograms anointroducedwa nehurumende akaita seiwaya, and also imimi as a farmer have you tried to adopt some of these? Akakushandirei papi ende ndapa machallenges amakasangana nawo?
Zvirongwa izvozvo ini ndakazvigamuchira nemufaro chaizvo. Number 1, Pfumvudza iyi of course kumashure uko inoona kunge yakanga iriko vanhu vachiita timba ugute because havasi vese vanga nemombe, havasi vese vaiafoda mechanization. But payakazoya hurumende ichitiyo 1 tine presidential input scheme tinopuwa ma-inputs, vakabva vazoona kuti no vana vari kupa ma-inputs ava tokapa ma-inputs but havasi kuziva kuti tofanira tichirima nemodel ipi. Ndobva vatipa model inonzi yePfumvudza. Model inonzi yePfumvudza chayakanaka ndechekuti inenge ichiti makomba anoenda uku nemakomba anoenda uku. It should be 19 by 52. Kuna kuti 52 weeks pagore. Pawiki pega pega uri kuwana gore rako pamalines ari kuenda uku. Zvoreva izvo kuti yakanakira kuti mombe dzakafanana nezvirwere zvakaitika mazuva apera. Asina mombe ari kuwanikwa achiita se achirima. Number 2, inini ndinotofunga kuti commercial farmers kuri kunzi vakwanisa kuiita inotibatsira pakuti mechanization yakanaka but nenyaya smart agriculture emission yemagases aya inokonzera environment. Saka iyi inenge iri like something chisina mapollutions achiri kuita kungotimba weisa nhiki yako zvinhu zvako zvoita se zvirimwa zvako zvokura.
Mr. Mapisa, nzira dzekurima dzechizvino zvino dzatinoti idzo modern day technologies akatikosherei ende imimi semurimi ndeapi amungadai makaadopta? Patatanga conversation yedu mataura imimi mukati makatanga kuadopta inonzi drip irrigation yatiri kuona mashure medu iyi. Saka zvakatikosherei sevarimi senyika kuti tikwanise kunge tichiadopta modern day technologies mukurima kwedu?
Inini handinoziva ndoti number 1 like yandakaadopta panapa inini ndofunga as you can see I'm using drip irrigation. Drip irrigation yakanakira kuti 1 unoseva mvura, 2 mvura iri kuenda paplant station painenge ichidiwa, 3 uri kureduce the growth rate yeweed because sora rinenge riri kwaro mvura iri kuenda paplant station. Saka nekudaro drip irrigation is a modern technology yandakashandisa ndikakwanisa kunge ndirarama nayo. 4 unoreduce labor manpower because kana uchinge uchishandisa hosepipe uchishandisa faro irrigation whatever dzimwe nemakeni unotora vanhu vakawanda vachimhanya because as you can see panapo we have got cabbage, apo we have got tomato, apo we have got tomato, we have got butternut. Zvinhu zvekuti zvinogona kungodiridzwa zvese nenguva pfupi ukavhura 30 minutes because ndima yedu tinenge takaidivida into blocks. Saka zvinhu zvedu zvinoita se even pakukura kwazvo zvinokura simultaneously because zviri kuwana mvura yakaenzana panguva imwe chete. Zvinotibatsira again pakuti kadasa mafertilizers painonzi fertigation process whereby unomixa mafertilizer ako machemicals ako muchigaba like chibhaketi chiri papo icho zvofamba nemumu. Mafertilizers ari kuenda paplant station akafanana nenguva imwe chete. Saka basa redu rinobva rareruka.
Saka mumwe munhu ari kuteerera izvi anogona kuti zvinhu zvese zvavataura izvi zvinongokwanisa kuafodwa neavo vane mari chete. Ko kana kune murimi anodawo kuzviitawo achiwana the same outcome but haana mari, haana zvikwanisiro, anokwanisa kuenda kupi kuti akwanise kupiwa? Kune maloans here, kune chii chekuti munhu anokwanisa kuwanawo kuti aadoptewo mameans aya? Kana pasina oitawo sei kuti akwanise kuva the same outcome but using different means?
Nyaya yekurima, nyaya yekuita business haisi yekuti munhu ubva wazviti handina kana mari ipapo ndinoparamba zvachose. Because ini pandakatanga business iri ndakanga ndisina mari but pane pamwe kuti unoona kuti akaproposal kako woita kana kuhama chaiyo, mukoma ndiri kumbirawo mari, ndaida kutenga mombe, ndoda kuti ndikozodai pamwe pacho kushandisa kutonyepa chaiko. Asi iwewe kana uri munhu anenge ari focused unofanira kutora mari iyoyo woisa into good use. If you want to do business ingange handiwanzoda kunyepa kuti ungatotanga business usina mari. There are so many ways dzekuti ungochiwana mari but chinenge chingodiwa chete kuve munhu ari honest, ari faithful and anenge ari focused kushandisa mari iyo pane zvaanenge aitorera so that you be in a position yekuti yekudzosera back mari iyoyo.
Patanga tichitaura matauro emukati mamwe matambudziko anosanganikwa nawo nevarimi ndeyekuti climate change kunovaiko kusanduka kwemaseasons edu epasi rose inogona kuaffecta zvirimwa in terms of ma-outputs and even in terms of ma-costs, in terms of ma-expenses, in terms of revenue generation yamanofanira kunge muchiwana mumaprojects enyu. Saka kana tasangana nemasituations akaita seiwayo sevarimi toita sei and also tichiadresa hurumende kuti yotibatsira sei kuti senyika tive prepared kana tasangana nemaissues akaita seclimate change.
Nenyaya yeclimate change chandingatotaura, of course zvimwe zvachona ndikutonzwa kufara chaizvo nekuti hurumende yedu zvimwe zvene yatozviita. Vakachera madhamu, vapromisa maboreholes in each and every village. Izvi zvakureva izvo kuti climate painenge ichinosa kunaisa mvura, madhamu tinawo taakuita irrigation. Pari kunonotsa maboreholes tinawo taakuita irrigation. Ende taita irrigation iyo ndamboti nenyaya yekusevha mvura, zvikurati kana mvura ichinge yaita shoma uku yepasi ichawandirwa, ndo patakuti no, let's use these technologies dzinoshandisa mvura shoma paplant station. Number 2, isuwo sevarimi vacho ngative vanhu vanogara vari padhuze nenyuzi tichinzwa zvinotohwa nemeteorology, mvura ishoma kana mvura yaita shoma tochiziva kuti no, ndapi maplants atingarime anova anoda mvura shoma, akafanana nemasunflower, anova akafanana namhunga vana zviyo. Ana sunflower zvirimwa zvekuti tinogona kunge tichiita sei, tichitika zvirima tinotengesa vanda zvemafuta. Also that pfumvudza tofana kutoimbresa at a large scale. Kana tava tichirima 1 plot inotaurwa ngatirime 7 plots because mvura yedu imvura iri kuya iri shoma, yaya iri shoma, taakwanisa kuita sei tichikohwa kuti nyika yedu isasunze, kuti ikonomi yedu isimuke, nekuti ukanga uchinge waguta excess wakwanisa GMB taakuexporta, hence marevenue enyika akuita sei akukura.
Maita basa zvikuru Mr. Mapisa nekurudziro nemashoko ekurudziro nemashoko edzidziso amati pamuzara nhasi kupfurikidza nechirongwa chenyu chamuri kuita pano pamusha panapa. Tinokutendai zvikuru.
Ndinogamuchira Sela waita hako, usafambireni chete, ramba wachifamba maruwa ese eZimbabwe, kuna vakawanda kuita mabasa akasiyana siyana anogona kumotivatawo vamwe vanhu vari mumatowns kuti tinge tichifamba tine.
With the nation of Zimbabwe making efforts to try and exceed the $8.2 billion target that was put in the agricultural sector, activities like the ones that Mr. Tendai Mapisa is putting forward are very much welcome in this economy, as agriculture forms the backbone of our economy of Zimbabwe. That concludes this week's segment of our Entrepreneur of the Week. Be sure to join us again next week. It's now back to the studio.
That was the third and final segment of the World of Business that brought to the spotlight the exploits that are being done by Mr. Mapisa as far as agriculture is concerned. And indeed, agriculture is the backbone of our economy, and more farmers need to come on board to support the government in this regard. And that brings us to the end of this week's edition of the World of Business. Join me again, same time, same place on your favorite TV station. Otherwise, from me to you, it's pleasant viewing.